The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by Underdog. Today we're talking about the Week 5 DFS picks on DraftKings. Going to go through lineup building, stacking, ownership, and making your teams a little bit different than everyone else's. Sub to 4for4.com to get yourself the ownership projections updated in periodic real time over the weekend. So once there's injury news that ends up happening, you can use the optimizer, all of the tools that are up there, and you can get John Breslin's full showdown main slate picks. John, I mean, you're hammering out each of these slates, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be back. So yeah, I got a new microphone. So if my picks are bad this week, the old microphone was my lucky microphone, but hopefully that won't happen. But yeah, coming off a pretty good Thursday night game, we saw some overtime, and two of the best players that are usually on main slate, Christian McCaffrey and Puka Nacua.
Yeah, so what do we do this week, Tambo? Like when we take an overview of this slate, like we got a whole bunch of injuries to deal with. ShipItNation.com, by the way, for all of Tambo's work, and you can sub to their YouTube channel for even more info on this stuff. But like no McCaffrey, no Puka, Bucky Irving is now hurt. Even Chuba Hubbard in a good matchup is hurt. What does this do to the slate? So we're missing some big names. We're missing some big name quarterbacks because obviously Lamar's not playing. But now we have some of this value at running back open itself up if you can pick right.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be, one, it's a 10-game slate. Now we've got the international games back. We've got the, the way the setup is, you're missing certain guys on the slate. They talked about some of the big guys out of the way just last night. So I think it's going to be the same as usual at quarterback, where it tends to spread out a little bit. You're still going to see that. But I think we're going to see it really condense, especially at the running back position this week. So we'll probably talk about that when we get there. But with those big injuries and certain news, I think it's going to be a setup where we do see very high chalk rates at the running back position.
What do you make of that, John, as we go through and try to figure out how to unlock this slate to begin with? Now, obviously, we're filming. We're live. Hey, what's going on, everyone who's watching live on YouTube and Twitter? Thanks. Smash the like, sub to the channel where you're here. If you want to chat, got to be subbed, even for a second, but you got to be subbed to Mayo Media Network in order to do that. How do you process, like, if there's going to be a consolidation of chalk primarily at running back, which it does seem like there might be, how do you get different? Like, what's your approach to that?
So we'll see. We have to see how the running back injuries pan out. After we get the practice reports for Friday, and then the information of who traveled with what team. I actually prefer having more value running backs, than just one standout value running back. Like last year, we had some like Zach Charbonnet weeks where he was like 80% owned in the higher dollar contest, 85% owned in higher dollar contests. This week, we do have a pile of like backup running backs or, starting running backs that are maybe in better situations. We've got like Rachaad White. If Bucky Irving goes down, we might have Rico Dowdle if Chuba Hubbard is out. We've got Brees Hall now without Braylon Allen. Devon Achane is maybe going to get more receiving work without Tyreek Hill. So I actually think there's a lot of options at the running back position. And there's guys like Jahmyr Gibbs. Like the Lions have a 30-point implied point total. But like nobody wants to play anybody from Detroit because we don't know where the action's going to go, but the action's going to go somewhere. So I think, in terms of how do you get different at the running back position, I think you can sell yourself on like any of these options, and you just have to click on a name that's different.
So, Tambo, here are the big four that stick out to me right now. And we do have confirmation that Bucky Irving is going to be out. We have confirmation that Chuba Hubbard is going to be out. And obviously, Trey Benson was placed on IR earlier on this week. So we're looking at four running backs to potentially choose from. Probably even more. I think you want to go with like DeMercado or one of those guys. I'm not a big DeMercado guy. I think that Michael Carter is going to handle the majority of the work on the ground and be their red zone and their goal line running back. Maybe I'm way off. Do you guys have a different opinion on that? Because that's the way that I'm reading that situation.
Go ahead, John.
I'm kind of a DeMercado fan, but it's hard to be objective. But I think he's going to get the passing game work, and there is a possibility he's getting more early down work as well. Like I think it's unlikely that Michael Carter is contributing in the passing game, and so especially on DraftKings, where you get the full point per reception, like even if it's a split and DeMercado is just getting the receiving work, then I think he might still be the better option between him and Michael Carter. But it's a question of, do you go for either of them if there's uncertainty there? I think you've got to take a little bit of a risk.
Well, I would swing it back the other way, Tambo. It was like, 8.5-point favorites. I just don't imagine them passing a ton in this game, especially to running backs.
Yeah, I think that's all like a product of just standard thought process where people assume that, like like last night, everybody just assumed the Rams would blow out the 49ers and then they actually lose. But I will say one interesting point is more the pricing. And that's why I don't really, it's definitely too much uncertainty for me to take on. Like, again, when you have 150 lineups of portfolio, maybe some of it slips in there. But I think for a lot of people watching this, wondering like, do they even need to go there? I don't know if you do. There's already so many good running backs on the slate that you could go to. And the DeMercado thing, I actually agree fully with everything that John just said. But then it's like, how do you actually play him at 4,700 over somebody like Rachaad White at the exact same price with no Bucky? So that's where it's going to be a little bit tricky versus like take a shot on Michael Carter, maybe pair him with the D, hope that they do it with the run game or something, and that's how it gets there. But I just don't know if you need to end up going there. And I don't think people want to go there as much either, even with the news that we have with Benson already.
So here's what we have. We have Michael Carter at the min at running back at 4,000. DeMercado at 4,700. As Tambo mentioned, John, Rachaad White is 4,700 without Bucky Irving. But every time that we've seen one of these guys go out, like it's kind of leaned more towards Bucky. But there's still a split there. I would put Sean Tucker in play as well at $4,000 if that's another option you wanted to go to. But I think the big one that everyone's going to gravitate towards is Rico Dowdle at 4,300 without Chuba now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it seems like every few hours we're getting in another, 4K-ish running back. But that, like I said, I think I like the idea of having more options than less options. The Miami defense is a defense we haven't really been afraid to pick on. In fact, we're really targeting it the first few weeks of the season. So yeah, Rico's in a good position. But when you have, when you have so many 4K running backs, you really can't, you don't want to forget about the expensive guys too, like H.N., Jonathan Taylor, Omar Ryan Hampton. Now we're talking about as one of the expensive, pay up running backs. So there's still some other options out there.
How do you approach it knowing this though? Like, do you have to, it's not that you have to use any of these guys, Table. Like, is it worth going to, let's say it's Dowdle. And he's the one who seems to be in the clearest position of all of the guys we talked about. Maybe they work in Trevor Etienne, but it's a soft Miami run defense. It's basically a pick'em game. It seems like he's going to get the majority of he was getting some of the red zone work last week anyway, but goal line work, he'll be involved in the passing game and probably carry the ball 10 to 15 times, depending on the game flow state of this match against the Dolphins. So let's call it him at $4,300. He's the guy that I would guess that most of the ownership ends up coalescing around. Now, probably not as much as usual for like a standalone low $4,000 starting running back, because there's a few that are out there right now. But do you just throw him in and we just work around it?
Yeah, I think it's all going to be how you build, like usual. So, if I'm putting him in, for example, in this slate, I'm always thinking about the puzzle pieces. We talk about this a ton on this show, go through it a ton on other shows that I do and at Mastermind and things like that. But the baseline of it is if I'm using someone like him, that allows me to pay up. What can I pay up to that other people that are using him aren't paying up to? Like, what might be a unique way? Maybe we talked about a minute ago with the Detroit stuff. It is hard to figure it out, but it's also not. Like, I can go to Goff, Amon-Ra. It might fail, but I can have Goff, Amon-Ra, and some other big dogs at the running back position, or a pay up tight end or something like that. So just looking to use a guy like Dowdle in a different way would be how I would think about it. And then no different than last week, Pat, an example here would be the Hampton stuff. When we get to the passing game, Hampton's not going to be unpopular, but I will note that, Herbert and his pass attack, people are going to like that spot. That's literally the Geno spot that won Millie Makers a few weeks ago against Washington. Like, people have been targeting Washington through the air. Genty last week was 13% owned in the $20 Millie Maker and absolutely crushed. But people loved Myers. People loved Bowers. You have to look at what you're doing with your lineup. And if you're not going to the pass attack with a guy like Herbert, maybe you can go to a guy like Hampton, who knows how it comes in. They can't all be the same ownership, so we'll have to wait and see. But I think with Dowdle, I'll just look to build around it with some bigger stacks.
That's interesting, John. How do you go about utilizing one of these chalk cheap running back pieces and to build around it? Is it much like what Tambo said? And do you have any options this week do you think that we can start with?
Yeah, so I think Tambo actually touched on it, is that you can overstack. So if you're using one of the chalky running backs, you're eating a lot of ownership there. So pick a game that you like, might be Jets Dallas, could be the Colts. Take a team that you think is in a good spot, and then you overstack it. So you're maybe adding one or two extra pass catchers from that game along with your quarterback, and that's getting you different right there, but it's getting you different in a correlated manner. That is either going to help your lineup, rise even further to the top, or maybe sink further to the bottom. But if you're sinking further to the bottom, they're not taking more money, out of your entry fee, right? So that's why we want to add variance to our lineups.
So I've started to build out one. You mentioned Dallas and the Jets. I think that's going to be not necessarily the most popular spot of the week, but at least one of them, just based on how both these defenses play. That you go like Dak, Pickens, Tolbert, who's only $3,600, which I found somewhat shocking. Nice spot for secondary receivers in this matchup, and then like Brees Hall on the other side. Tambo, is there another way that you would try to populate that game? Like, would it be Fields with Javonte Williams and Tolbert, then build a super team around it?
Yeah, I definitely like the field size. I think Fields, Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, plugging those guys together. Again, if you want to go with the full overstack, I think is Mason Taylor questionable? I know he had a pretty good game last game, but I think he's still going to be in this week, so we'll have to see. But yeah, there's a bunch of ways you can go, but I do like that side. But if you go the Dak side, that's fine too. And really, it doesn't look like it's getting much ownership. And just staying on running back for 2 seconds with the same conversation, like Brees Hall, he's the other way, right? You don't often have I know that Allen is, still doing his thing, but he was a backup running back that gets injured. And now all of a sudden you got the starting running back be like, okay, now they have to just use him, or at least that's how you feel. That's obviously a pretty good spot going into the slate. How it works out, none of us know till it plays out. But I do think that's at least somewhat interesting. At home against Dallas can be used in a ton of different ways. And it's not the same as Hubbard or Bucky going out and leading to a backup. It's a guy that was kind of potentially stealing some thunder going out to now allow what should be the full-time starter just be the guy that gets to roll out there. So I like this start for a build, though. I'm fine with it.
John, how do you feel about this? Because we've used a $3,600 wide receiver and we've used Pickens here. Like, does it make more sense to go like Tolbert Ferguson, leave out Pickens? And we've already used up 2 of our running back slots on a mid-tier, mid-5K running back and a cheap running back. Are we leaving too many good running backs aside here, knowing that we could still afford them with a lineup like this? Like, is there a different way to manipulate this?
I actually like what you've got here. I was going to suggest Kevontae Turpin missed practice on Thursday as well. So that adds another like kind of feather for Jalen Tolbert. And like George Pickens just had such a huge game that, like I don't mind going with Pickens with CeeDee Lamb out.
Well, what if we do this? What if we take Pickens out and we put in Ferguson? Because we just saw Darren Waller light up the Jets. Maybe they're susceptible to tight ends. And Tolbert's he's going to get like 8 targets in this game at $3,600.
Yeah, I was going to add Ferguson next with Pickens, but
so would I. I would just cut in for 2 seconds. We don't have to take the other guy out.
Yeah.
I think it's
the
price is right on these guys. A little Bob Barker for you, rest in peace. But if the price is right on these guys, Pat, you can definitely build around these options still and be able to fit them in.
Oh, but even at this point, let's just even throw in like I'll just randomly pick a defense. Giants D, $2,900. Now we have $8,100 per player. I feel like we've saved too much at some point.
Yeah, I think there's you can go up at defense, you can change it around. I'm just saying like the overstack will make sense. If for example, this week, if let's say the Turpin news even, and I don't think like Tolbert would, bounce off the page at that point, but I think something even like Ferguson and Hall will end up being a very popular combination of people using that as a secondary stack. The way to get after it is to come up over the top and be able to build on top of that. So maybe Dowdle could come out of this one or change it up there. John might have something though.
Yeah, I like the things, the way this lineup has evolved, because we're going to spend up on a couple of players here that most people aren't going to be getting into their lineups, right? Like most people are going to look at this salary and say, oh, maybe I should like get Ferguson out of there, right? And put in Trey McBride, but we're playing Dak. So like we want this correlation. Like if Dak gets 3-4 passing touchdowns against the Jets, which is absolutely conceivable. One goes to Tolbert, one goes to Ferguson, Pickens gets 2 again. We're in a really good spot with this correlation. We could also just spend up at defense.
Yeah.
What would you like to do to spend up at defense? So I actually kind of love the Giants defense, $2,900.
I mean, we could go like right to Arizona. I mean, Tennessee has not looked good on offense. That's a defense that people aren't going to be able to afford unless they're spending down like we are.
How about this? Instead of because when we take a look at the top options, you have like Jonathan Taylor sitting there. Amon-Ra is the most expensive receiver, and we can afford both those guys and have money left over. So where is the wide receiver spot you think that we should target here? Because if we're not going to play Gibbs or St. Brown in this lineup, does it make the most sense just to play the Lions defense?
Yeah, you could say that Detroit's controlling that game. I like the idea of thinking about the other games because we're so heavy here on Dallas and the Jets. I was going to say like maybe we're putting Jonathan Taylor in at running back, because Daniel Jones and that Colts Raiders game is the other one I mentioned that's going to be popular. Like, but what if it's just a Jonathan Taylor day? But so I like this idea of like thinking about now how do we approach the other games? What's happening in the other games that's making the Dallas Jets game be the game we needed to have? So yeah, I like the idea of Jonathan Taylor there and just saying that other very popular game. We just dropped down. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jonathan Taylor. That's not going to be a combination a lot of people have. Now we just pick a decent defense.
Because I think I would gravitate with $3,200 left. You get Eagles, Dolphins, Chargers, Cowboys, Seahawks, Giants, Bucks, Broncos. I think I would just gravitate back to the Giants in that spot.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm good with the Giants. I also think the Chargers could be fine there as well, because you're going to be a lot of people on like the Hamptons or the Herbert stacks. And so if you're not on any of that, that could be another way that they get after it. That would also potentially hurt some of those guys from their production. So just from a game theory perspective, that would be another alternative, but I'm fine with Giants. I think that's good. Solid.
Yeah. The other way that you could try to manipulate this, we're $100 short. I don't even know where we would save it. That we could get Jonathan Taylor and the Colts together, almost have that like Jordan Mason Vikings defense week where Mason did like kind of enough, and it was the Vikings defense that did everything. It's just streaming defenses against Vegas right now, John, is a pretty solid move.
Yeah. So actually, we could keep an eye on the practice reports. If Turpin ends up playing, I think he's $100 cheaper than Tolbert. So there's our $100 right there. Or we could look to try to drop down somewhere else.
You could also I like that call because there's a chance we still see him, but also you could just flip it to the other side of Amon-Ra and play Jamar Chase. I don't love him as a one-off, but it's also not like we have Burrow on this slate. So it's like if Jamar Chase just happens to be one of the dudes that has the big day, it's possible the way the wide receiver position sets up this week, that just happens.
This is an interesting spot for Jamar Chase because he's been buried, John. What would you guess that his ownership is on the main slate? Like, would you say it's above or below 10% this week?
I would say probably below. People are going to go to the Detroit side there, but like, it doesn't matter when we get the fantasy points in the game. So like, let's say we get, a Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown, David Montgomery touchdown, typical Lions, like spreading it out. Maybe we get a defensive touchdown. Like if the Bengals are just passing late into that game, it doesn't matter when Jamar Chase gets his points. We still get them at the end of the slate. I'd like Jamar Chase. I think it'll be less than 10%.
I think this is a nice spot for him because if you just reverse engineer Tambo, the Bengals schedule as of late. Now, they can't block, which is a real problem, especially against Detroit, who can generate pressure with only sending 4 guys at a time and dropping everyone to coverage, but they're down both their starting corners. So at best, you have the third best corner on the Lions, who's a slot corner, bumping outside to maybe try to cover Jamar Chase. They're not playing the Broncos this week. Like, their schedule's been weirdly tough, and not that this is an easy game for them, but it should be a pass happy game. And Minnesota and Denver's defense are actually just really good, especially on the outside, trying to shut down wide receivers and attacking quarterbacks. So it seems like a game that even for like season long fantasy, like if you were looking to trade Jamar Chase, I'd probably wait till maybe he goes off in this game.
Yeah, I'd also, just caution it for people. Like, again, it's just continuous, the constant of this can't happen because of this. The Saints hung around with the Bills for 3.5 quarters. Like, that was supposed to be a 20-point blowout. No, not the case. Last night, there was no way Mac Jones was walking into the stadium with that outfit on and coming out and getting a W, goes out and gets the job done just fine. And really, it felt like they could have won by more. So it's like, I don't know, just people just assume these teams can't get it done. Jamar Chase can make catches. Jamar Chase can show up this week and be a guy. So that's the thing about it. And I just think that's something people just are overlooking, forgetting it's still the NFL.
Is there the other side of this game that you would want to play? Because you guys both expressed interest in Fields to begin with. I just don't know how to play Fields if it's not just by himself.
I actually think it's a little more condensed. I feel like, he's one of the quarterbacks that he can just get there on his own for sure. If you're playing a naked quarterback, he would certainly fit the mold of what that looks like when you're building lineups. But with Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, again, just another way to build differently with Breece Hall. And I don't know, like Fields could actually get some steam this week. I think people saw enough to say, like, what was it, like a 75-yard TD run? Like when you see there, whatever that was, the big long run. It's like when people see that, I already saw Twitter comments, X, whatever you want to call it, where people get excited. I definitely think there's going to be some love there, but how many are going to play him, Hall, with Wilson, with a run back or something like that and do it that way. I don't know if as many people are going to do that, to be honest.
Do you have a problem with this, John, going Fields like a running quarterback with one of his receivers, but also the running back? Like, is there enough to go around there? Or are we just saying with this lineup, Dallas can't stop shit. They're going to give up 35 points at least. Might as well get enough of this game.
I'll be honest, I don't love it.
Okay.
I would go Hall or Fields. Or I would take Wilson out. I mean, it's possible that Brees Hall, gets a long receiving touchdown. Like he can do that. That would help both Fields and Hall. I just don't love the idea of playing this side of the game. Playing 3 Jets. The Jets are the underdog team here at home. That's against the Dallas defense. So I give some respect to Vegas if they're saying that the Jets are still underdogs against this Dallas defense. Like I don't know that I want to be playing 3 Jets, but it could hit. I just prefer the Dallas side.
So you prefer the Dallas side. So if we were to build this out, like Tambo, would you have any pushback on that? Like, again, is that?
Yeah, I would actually. And we don't often disagree, but I think like the thing for me is, again, I'll use it again, but the price is right. We're still talking 11.2K for like Justin Fields could break that price tag on his own. And also you got 6 targets a game for Brees Hall the last couple of games. I definitely think, and if they are underdogs and they are having to come from behind and do their thing, they still have a 23-point team total at home. And Dallas D is still obviously a different defense this year than last year. So I don't know. It's not like my favorite. I was just saying, if you're building this out, my original point was I don't think you would have to play Fields naked. I think the way to get different with a Brees Hall lineup this week would be to block those. Maybe the answer is to leave out Garrett Wilson, because most who have Justin Fields would have him, and hope that you're just owning the end zone when they do get down. Now, they are still expected to score 22.5 points at home. Maybe it is just Fields and Hall that have the field day, and that ends up being the guys that are needed. And more Justin Fields lineups are likely to exclude Brees Hall and include Garrett Wilson. So that could be a way that you just build that little combo pack in and do it that way for the price, 11.2.
Yeah, does that make sense to you, John? Or is that, again, just trying to be a bit too cute with this game when there's more of a cheaper savings and more of a direct path on the other side, or at least it feels that way?
I mean, I like the other side, but I think what Tambo made sense is what Tambo said makes some sense. That a lot of people are maybe going to have some kind of rule in there that's just like pair my quarterback with at least one wide receiver from the same team. But like Brees Hall does get so much receiving work that he should be an exception to that rule. And Justin Fields can add so much on the ground, right, with his rushing that you don't necessarily need, multiple receivers, multiple pass catchers. So I do think that like a Fields Brees Hall combination is going to be more unique, but has just as likely a chance of hitting as like a Fields Garrett Wilson combination.
And Pat, I do want to add, like, I think this is important because we just had a huge discussion on the Monday show. I do the takedown breakdown, and it was a big discussion around Hurts and Barkley. And there's a big difference, right? First of all, they have tush push. They literally eat each other's lunch. Does Barkley catch passes? Absolutely. Can he take it 40 to the house? Yes. But then you also got to remember they're both like $8,000. So now you're talking about spending $16,000. They likely cannibalize each other. Yes, he can catch passes, but is that really good for DFS when you're building a whole lineup? Something like a Fields, Hall, Ferguson block, where most are just playing Hall and Ferguson, and then Fields is the quarterback that's needed. Like, things like that are what I'm saying when I talk about the penthouse and going to different levels. It's just a different way of thinking, but it costs almost nothing to go, what is it, $15,000 or something?
Yep.
16, maybe?
Let's see, 554, 2.
Yeah, 16, 34 left.
16-2, I think.
Yeah.
16-6.
$16K for all 3 of those guys, and it fills out positions and gets much different with what could be a popular combo in a secondary of Brees Hall and Ferguson. What John clarified and brought up there was like, yes, there is people that literally set rules to say none of this can happen, and that's where you could end up getting unique with it. And now you can kind of fill it out with a ton of money, right? You have almost 6K per spot, and you got a defense to pick still.
Well, John, if we try to fill this out, is Ferguson the go-to? If we were going to play one guy from the Dallas side in this lineup, maybe it's because, I like a long shot. I like an underdog here. I would go back to Tolbert in this game and then try to build a super lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can. I mean, there's not a ton of opportunity cost at tight end position. I will say, just to Jake Ferguson's credit, he's had games of like 14 targets and 12 targets so far this season. So I do think he's the guy that could be a good Dallas, run back with a Fields lineup, just because he could get there on receptions. So that's not necessarily helping Dak Prescott that much, but it does, each reception's adding like a 10-yard run to Jake Ferguson. But yeah, I like the idea of getting Tolbert in there as well. I think he's in a pretty good spot. He's a guy who hasn't really done a ton on the field, but with the Dallas passing game down, down CeeDee Lamb, possibly down Kevontae Turpin, he's going to be getting the targets.
So, and that leaves me $100 less to spend on Tyler Warren. I don't want to use Jonathan Taylor in this lineup, just to try to make it a little bit different. I think this is a nice opportunity to get some Lions in there. And what are the other teams that you think that we should be targeting? I know we mentioned Arizona, John. Is there anyone from that game that you would want to go to, or is that just like throwing Marvin Harrison and pray it's one of the 4 weeks a year he scores 2 touchdowns?
Yeah, or Trey McBride. And we already kind of talked through the Arizona running back situation. But yeah, I agree. You could put in Marvin Harrison or Trey McBride. I'll say that if I'm taking a one-off from that game, I probably prefer McBride, just because I think his path to outscoring the other tight ends is much easier than Marvin Harrison's path to outscoring all the other wide receivers on the slate.
Tambo, Michael Pittman might be out for the Colts as well. He's dealing with an injury right now. I don't know who that necessarily benefits, because Alec Pierce might be back this week as well. A.D. Mitchell, who knows if they're going to ever put him back into the lineup. Josh Downs is not getting the full complement of runs. Just strikes me as like Warren and Taylor are the two. Pittman, I suppose, if he's healthy, if you want to run them out there. It's a great spot. I don't know how to deploy them properly. Like, would you have any problems on this slate with the amount of money that we have left? Would you go Warren and McBride, or is that too many tight ends for the amount of money that we have?
It's probably fine, but I'm thinking about some other stuff right now, and it's like if I like the McBride call quite a bit, actually, even though he's going to get ownership. I get it. I think Warren is still going to get ownership, and obviously it will go up even more if you get the Pittman news or whatever. But I think having something like Jonathan Taylor, McBride, and then start making decisions, for me at least, on that Chargers game. Do I want Hampton instead of the passing game? Am I able to find something with that passing game where I can fit a guy in? It's just really tricky when they make, now actually McConkey, I think, is the cheapest of them all, but I think it's like McConkey, Allen, Quentin Johnston, and, QJ looks pretty good right now. It's just, does that keep up? It's hard to tell. So taking a guy like Hampton, I think, is fine as well in something like this.
Weirdly, John, I'm kind of the other way on that game. Just I see how beat up that the Chargers are at the moment, especially on the offensive line. I just don't know how that offense is going to operate. I mean, the running game, I initially came into the week liking Omarion, and then I started thinking Washington's been very good against the run so far this year. They're very bad deep down the field. Logically, everything points to Quentin Johnston as the piece of this game that you want. I just don't know if they're going to have enough time to throw the ball down the field to get him in those spots.
Yeah, actually, I agree. I think that's all sound reasoning. That all actually leads me a little bit to Ladd McConkey. Now, like Tambo pointed out, now the cheapest of the Chargers wide receivers. I was just writing a blurb on McConkey that I think that we've seen people break out each week this NFL season, and watching the Washington games, right? Like watching Trey Tucker explode, watching Drake London put up a big game. I think that even with a shaky offensive line, I think the Chargers can get it done here. They're passing as much as anybody in the league. And, people are going to go with such condensed pricing on the Chargers wide receivers. They're all, $100 less than the other. So Johnston's the most expensive. Keenan Allen's $5,600. I think McConkey is $5,500. People are just going to go to Quentin Johnston, especially on DraftKings. And, what if it's just Ladd McConkey, right? He's going to see the lower ownership, I think. So I'd go McConkey. And I think they'll have the time to get McConkey the ball.
Do you think they're going to try to make a concerted effort at some point, Tambo, to get him the ball? Because they're just like, hey, you just go run around and do nothing.
Yeah, I think for sure. And I think it's just, we've seen this sometimes, Pat, we've done these shows a bunch during the golf season. And sometimes we just say, you got to bet on the talent. You got to bet on the player, and you just got to run with it. Here's a spot where you're betting on a talent with QJ, but you're also, there's ownership coming with that. McConkey, like John had said, that was going to be my favorite of the three, just based on the price and the fact that it looks like he'll be at least a little bit lower owned than the other two options. And people, the thing about Allen, he can always have a good game too, because he just catch, etc. But that also, you don't often at least see it amount up to a full ceiling spot versus McConkey could just be the guy that you need to have. So I think McConkey's the guy for me too at 5,500. And then it leaves you, you've got it there, something like that you want to do.
It doesn't even need to be. I put Debo in on the other side. Like, John, do you think that we need to bring back in that game, or just kind of let Washington do Washington things?
I don't think we necessarily need a bring back, but I do think Debo's in a really good spot here. And I love the combination that putting Debo in gave us just enough money to get Jackson Smith and Jigba in there. I'll say that Debo's dinged up a little bit himself, so we got to pay attention to that. Or we could be looking at like a Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey value bring back. So, but I love the Debo JSN combo that we finished the lineup with.
Yeah.
Well, I watch out for Luke McCaffrey, Tambo. He scored touchdowns in 2 straight games, and Cuss started calling him the good McCaffrey.
Hey, I don't think you can be saying that after last night. CMC still looked pretty damn good, but I will say the guy last year, who was it? Westbrook Ikine. He can't get a touchdown again. Like 9 touchdowns later, and he is still getting touchdowns, and that was the thing. So last season, at least. So sometimes these guys just do keep popping up. You would never think he would.
Well, it's week 5, Tambo, which means that there is a player that we probably need to inject into our lineups. I think it was week 5. I think it was week 5 last year that this worked out very swimmingly. Darius Slayton's only $4,300 this week,
and we got to talk about him this week, right?
Yeah, like he's in the spot, right?
Yeah. Hey, you're not going to talk me out of him. I think it's an interesting spot. We had this full conversation last year. I actually like his price tag this week because it's not 3,100 or 3,200 or like everyone just assumes you can get it there. It is a little bit more of a thought process. And currently, even with the injury news and whatnot, it still seems like, no chance they're going to go there. But we saw, certain guys have spots last week. We've seen teams against the Saints where these guys can break out. And I think this is another spot you could go to a guy like our boy, Darius Break the Slayton.
Yeah, well, we'll try to break the slate in here. John, just before we go to break, I wanted to talk to you about defenses. I threw in the Texans D, $2,400. Obviously, they didn't know Lamar was going to be out when they made this pricing, but that seems like a wild misprice.
Yeah, that happens a few times a year, right? We get the statue, backup quarterback coming in against a defense and it's mispriced. I think it actually feels like it happens once a year with Cooper Rush. But yeah, Texans defense is in a good spot. You have to worry about ownership. But we've seen defenses break the slates already this year. So Texans absolutely in a good spot, even on the road.
If you had to guess right now, John, what do you think that the ownership comes in at? 20%?
I was going to go a little bit lower than that, just because the Texans are not the only defense in a really good spot. The problem is they might be the best cheap defense in a good spot. So yeah, I think 15 to 20 is definitely a possibility. And remember, we have a little bit of a smaller slate this week as well, right? Like 10 games instead of 11 or 12. So that could boost the ownership, obviously, in all defenses as well.
Now, Tambo, you know that I like to try to find my cheap defense, roll with it. This was the one that I kind of jumped out to immediately. My eyes just gravitated towards what a good spot it is for the Texans. Now, obviously, the other ones would be the Giants for me at 2,900. I actually think the Seahawks at 28 at home against the banged up Buccaneers is a really nice spot for all the ones in the 2,000. But if you were to pivot off of the Texans at 2,400 with a similar price, I can't tell you which one I would go to. I don't like any of those defenses.
It's hard to say where the ownership comes in, but I think actually right now we'll see, but people might be liking the Saints at 2,200. So I think you're just moving to other squads in this range are fine, but it might be moving up. The other thing is, that could come into play here is for just $100 more is the Carolina Panthers at home. And again, if Dowdle picks up steam, we saw this with Jordan Mason a couple of weeks ago, right? Where it was the way to cut into that ownership was to play the defense nobody's playing. And also say, you see the Ravens stuff and all that. This is no homer. I'm telling you, they're going to win this game. That's what happens. It doesn't matter. That's just how the NFL works. They've been so bad. They can't beat anyone. They played amazing teams in Kansas City, in whatever. I don't care that the Chiefs hadn't won yet. They've played good teams, Detroit, things like that. So it's at home against Houston. The spread has flipped completely. They're underdogs. I have a feeling that they're going to come out and just get the job done when right now, apparently no one thinks they can. But we just saw last night an 8.5 point underdog win outright. The Saints kept up with the Bills last week for 3.25 quarters. It's the NFL. Stuff happens. Ravens at home. I think there's a spot here that they come out and still find a way to get the job done.
I don't necessarily disagree, but John, even if the Ravens win this game, it feels like it's more of a lack of Texans offense rather than their defense gets blown up.
Right. I was hoping we have enough time for a CJ Stroud build. As Tambo was talking about, the Ravens are going to win. Stroud and Nico Collins is a good way to start a lineup at low ownership.
You know
It's-
what? We're going to build that one out. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to build that one out because I want to see how that ends up working out, especially with so much of the cheaper defenses and cheaper running backs that we have on the slate and what that could lead to. So coming up after the break, you smash the like and sub to the channel while you're here. We're going to get into Texans-Ravens builds. Stay tuned. Johnnie Walker, a brand synonymous with the game of golf for over a century, is bringing bold energy to golf's fiercest stage and ultimate rivalry with the Spirit of the Cup, a fan-first program that celebrates national pride, fandom, and the relentless spirit of competition. The program invites a new generation of fans to experience golf through modern rituals, bold collaborations, and culture-forward experiences. Leading into the tournament weekend, Johnnie Walker will bring the Spirit of the Cup tour to the streets of New York City from Wednesday, September 24th through Sunday, September 28th. As a part of Johnnie Walker's commitment to making golf straight up more fun, the experience is open to the public, offering golf lovers and inspiring golfers to chip their way to glory while sipping signature Johnnie Walker cocktails. Drink responsibly. All right, we're back, and we're going to build out Houston against Baltimore. Tambo, because we're going to take the Houston side in this one, which means they're going to be playing catch-up because the Ravens are going to win. We got Stroud with Nico Collins, and I assume Derrick Henry has to be the guy that you would put in here.
That's who I'm putting in. I thought you were going to say that they're playing catch-up, so they got to throw it. I think Stroud is going to be playing catch-up to
That's
Henry.
what I'm saying.
I think is what you were getting at, yeah.
Yeah, like this build is Stroud and Collins because they're playing catch-up. So Derrick Henry. John, who else do you throw into this? Woody Marks?
Yeah, that's somebody I wanted to bring up because he's going to get lost in the shuffle of all of these cheap running backs. But he's a guy that had big, yet another rookie running back that had a big week last week. So I wouldn't necessarily add Woody Marks to this lineup, for using Derrick Henry. But I think he's somebody we should keep in mind, as we're exploring, these cheap running backs.
All right. So where else can we move with this? And now we're kind of left in that similar situation that we were earlier. We got $5,100, Stroud, Henry, and Collins. Yeah, we can throw in Dowdle. We can throw in some cheaper options. I mentioned Slayton was the one that we should probably end up going with. I don't know why I can't share this tab. There we go. There we go. Now it's working out a little bit better for me that I can share this one. Where do we go here, Tambo? Like I can't figure out if we don't just keep building like the same Jonathan Taylor Giants or Colts D. Like it all seems like it's falling into place that way. How do we switch that up?
Once you go to this, it's pretty much do whatever you want because I honestly don't know between Stroud, Henry, and Nico what we end up with at ownership, but I can't imagine like any of them getting ownership on this slate. We'll have to see. Maybe Nico ends up getting a little just because it gets spread out at wide receiver more, but I don't think Henry's going to get anything, and I definitely don't think Stroud's getting anything. By the way, I believe today is CJ Stroud's birthday, as a matter of fact. So it might be CJ Stroud week, little celebration for him there too. Maybe it's a comeback win. I'm all on high on the Ravens winning the game, and then at the last minute, Stroud gets to Nico for a W or something. But Stroud, Nico, Henry kind of allows you to do whatever you want. So if you want to plug in Dowdle, Taylor, McBride, like some of those guys, you can definitely do that.
So like, how do we kind of pick off pieces of the other games with this, John? We can go like A-Chain and Tet McMillan in this spot, two of the worst defenses in the league. We probably try to find a way to work a Jet, a Cowboy, or both back in here, or maybe even a Lion. Does that make the most sense?
Yeah, there's a lot of directions we could go. Actually, one of the guys that was just standing out to me is George Pickens. We want to address that Dallas Jets game, and maybe we're just saying that Pickens is getting 2 touchdowns, and that's then Javonte Williams is just grinding it out on the ground, and the Jets don't get anything going. So that addresses that game. I love the Tet McMillan run back on Von Echan, and put Tyler Warren in there. We could get a little bit sneaky and try to double stack Stroud, maybe with Dalton Schultz at tight end if we're looking to get a little bit funky. But I'll leave that to your discretion.
Yeah, Schultz would actually, I think Schultz fits into this. Yeah, Schultz would fit into this, or Tambo. We can take out Tet, use Dowdle, and then be able to pay back up at receiver. So if we use Dowdle in the flex to go with like both running backs in that game, put Uncle Rico back in there, we're back up to 5,300 at wide receiver. And maybe we don't run back to Jet. We can.
What if you just take out Achan though? Now that you just run the Dowdle side and then get your Brees Hall play in there, like great spot and opposite of Pickens, and then you don't have Taylor, but you have Warren. So I think you can kind of make it make sense pretty quickly if you do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I like Achan in this game. Like, what's not to like about him?
Nothing. I think he's phenomenal. Actually, I was going to bring it up earlier because especially if any ownership that's on him right now might get held in check if Dowdle picks up a ton of steam based on the Hubbard stuff. So that's what happens on a Thursday or a Friday. People love something. The news and the projections change and they move away from the spot. I'm just saying again, we've talked about this a ton of times. I don't think you need both those guys in that game. I think if Achane comes out and crushes, Dowdle can still get there because of his price. Certainly. I'm just saying that the build made like when you're on, for me, I try and make things easy. When I'm on Stroud, Collins, and Derrick Henry, I'm not likely to leave out Breece Hall. I think he's in one of the best spots of the week. Whether or not it works out, we'll see. But it's like I said, his position was already good, and it only got better. And they do pass him the ball. 6 targets each of the last 2 weeks. On DraftKings, at that price tag, I'm very interested in him. And I like the Pickens call, and he made sense with him. So I was thinking of it from that perspective.
So you like Breece Hall. I mean, Breece Hall rates out, like I'm on the 4for4 optimizer right now. If you go to 4for4.com/Mayo, you can get a discount on the optimizer, John's work, all the tools. Highly recommend that you do that. So I'm looking at it. It's Hall, Achane, Jonathan Taylor as like the top 3 best GPP values right now. Now that's not factoring in Dowdle. I would get John, would you guess that Dowdle jumps to the top of that list once like that injury news gets updated?
Yeah, I think so. I think Dowdle is going to be getting the lion's share of the work in Carolina with Chuba Hubbard being out. So yeah, I think Dowdle will start standing out as an excellent value priced in the 4Ks.
So the way that I wanted to structure this and why it's difficult for me to get, I guess if you put Breece Hall in it, the one thing that I liked about the way that this built out, Tambo, was I was able to get Jameson Williams into this lineup, who I think is going to have a massive game against Cincinnati. Like they actively tried to get him the ball. That was like their only purpose in that game last week against Cleveland. It was just like, hey, let's try to get Jameson Williams an 80-yard touchdown. I think he had like 170 yards of unrealized air yards, but because, they might have given up some points, but generally speaking, Cleveland's defense pretty good. Cincinnati's defense really bad. That if they tried that last week, I think they're going back to it here. And as a one-off, that would be the one-off piece I would want in this game.
Yeah, it's all, I mean, you can fit anybody anywhere. It's all lineup dependent on how you're building it out. But I think there's just a ton of different ways you can go. Like, again, maybe you just avoid the Dowdle spot completely and you end up picking somebody else there. Like John had said, what if, you can go Jonathan Taylor, move off Warren and go to Schultz, keep your guy in there, and you have 2.3K left. I don't know what that was earlier when we talked, but it was like Titans or Saints or something.
Yeah, that's no fun. Let's try this.
I'll go Saints. There's a way to use the Saints right there.
Let's get Slayton into that Jameson Williams spot. And how much is Breece Hall? Breece Hall is 56. Can we save $300 off one of these guys?
Seahawks defense.
Yeah, Seahawks D down to Texans. Now we can't use the Texans. So yeah, we'd have to use one of these jabroni Ds. Not Panthers, not Texans. Yeah, Titans, Saints, or Bengals. Ugh. Who would it be of that collection in this lineup?
Well, this is where I always talk about this stuff, though. Again, anything can happen. It's DFS. But why are we running Achane with Slayton and a shitty defense when you can run Dowdle because you're way different already in this lineup, get a better receiver than Slayton and any defense you want. The 3v3 is going to be unquestionably better. Achane could bust it all up and break it. But my point is when you're already different everywhere else, you don't need to force these things into your builds.
What am I forcing in? I don't feel like I'm forcing into Achane. I just want to play Achane because he's good.
Right, but when Achane makes you go down to Slayton, which then makes you go down to like a shitty defense where you can't decide, you can make your life a lot easier and go Dowdle and 2 guys you really like, a defense and a player. Like, what if you go Dowdle and Jameson Williams in this exact lineup?
Is that really Johnny? I mean, I like Slayton this week. I think he's a great play.
Yeah, then it shouldn't be that hard. Just throw a defense in.
Yeah,
that's my point. Is like you're struggling with it, then you don't have to struggle.
What would you use?
Anyone you want.
I'm asking you to pick one for me. Pick one.
Yeah, I mean, whoever you want. Like you could put in, who's the guy just below him? Basically, you got the Titans, the Saints, or the Bengals to choose between. So I would put in the Titans probably because we're not playing McBride and we're not playing the backup defense, the backup running back for the Arizona Cardinals. So it would make the most sense to me, or the Saints would fit that pattern, but they're also super owned by the early projections.
What do you make of it? John, who would you pick?
Saints defense is going to go down in points when Slayton gets his 3 touchdowns.
We're against him. So yeah, it's very clear. But I think the one that made the most sense anyway is the Titans when you only have this amount of money left because you're not on the Arizona stuff that like McBride will be owned. And so that would be a way to get different right there. That's what I would do.
John, agree, disagree?
Yeah, actually, I would use the Titans defense. I think the Titans defense is not as bad as it has looked. I think the whole Titans team has just got a tough schedule to start the season. So yeah, I'd put the Titans in there. Defensive scoring is so volatile and haphazard that I think they could put up they're in a good position as anybody else to get a special team score.
All right, so let's go to Detroit and Cincinnati. Because I'm really struggling with how to do this. We haven't put Gibbs into a single lineup yet, Tambo. And John, like, if you were to stack up the Goff side, is that the side that you would want to do, or to be Gibbs with Cincinnati guys coming back?
I might just use Gibbs in the Lions defense. I would. When I look at that game, the first guy that comes to mind is Jahmyr Gibbs. But I think you had a good Jameson Williams call as well. That the Bengals defense is leaky all over. So we could go Gibbs, Lions, and Jameson Williams. We could go Gibbs and Jameson Williams, and then a Cincinnati run back.
How would you like to play this, Tambo?
I'd probably play Goff and Jameson Williams because you just told me Jameson Williams is going to get a touchdown and halfway yardage bonus for Goff at a 170-yard game. So I'd be very interested in that starting point for him. And they have a 30-point team total. So even on the road in Cincy, I'd be fine with that. And then you can go further with it. But I definitely think like just what you said really does help Goff. And it's akin to last week when everybody wanted Nakua, but nobody wanted Stafford. And I was hammering that home. It's like if Nakua actually has his 40 and Adams does anything, it's very likely just to bring Stafford to the top of the board. And he got to 30 or something and had a ceiling game for him. But he had another good one last night. It's like those guys just drag him along. It's Drew Brees back in the day when Kamara and Michael Thomas would just drag his ass to the top of the leaderboards. It's like he didn't really do that much. He'd check it down to them, and then they would take it 80 yards or something, and that would really help him.
So, John, do you throw Amon-Ra in here? Do you throw Gibbs in here and just try to capitalize on the Lions potentially scoring 40 points?
Yeah, I mean, their implied point total is actually 30, so 40 is not that not that far out of consideration. I would go. You go either way. I would just go with Gibbs. I think he's in a fantastic spot in this game. And this way, hopefully, you're getting the Lions share of the touchdowns, right? Whether they come through the air or the ground.
Is there, like, Tambo, if we're trying to either go to the Bengals side or just even a question about, like, how does David Montgomery fuck this up for us? I guess is my question.
Exactly. That's the question always. We know exactly how he fucks it up, but it's whether or not he does. But I think when you're building like this, you're just hoping that he does not. And I don't think you need to run back Cincy, but like we said, it would give you a completely different build if you did, because if you put Jamar Chase in, you have very little money. But being that you have Dowdle, cheap tight ends, cheap defenses, Tolbert, Slaytons, those guys that you already like, I actually think you can just build your version of this, Pat. And I don't think it's that crazy because some would say, like in Showdown, when you use a cheap captain, you're going to end up on the same build as everybody else, like Mac Jones at MVP on FanDuel last night. True. But in something like this, in Classic Slate, there's just so many of your guys that you can build with that you can kind of do whatever you want. Yeah, you can even move up on some of those plays. Like, exactly.
Well, what you could do here, John, like taking a look at it, you could have McBride and then have $5,700 for a flex if you wanted to. So that's like Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen, Jacoby Myers. It's not a great range. It's a really confusing range. You mentioned Woody Marks falls in there. He's at $5,400. Or you take like a Tyler Warren, get up to $6,800, and then in your flex, you're looking at Nico, Genty, Pickens, Omarion, like that level of player. If we go Tolbert, Brees Hall, and McBride as the three that we put in, we don't need to go to those guys. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, but Texans defense, I'd be looking at Woody Marks, right? Just plug him in. We've got the running back defense correlation there.
That makes a ton of sense to me. Do you think it would be worthwhile instead of using, like I threw in Tolbert and Brees Hall, so Tolbert instead of Dowdle as the cheap option here, would this be a lineup to go Dowdle, A-Chain, or Dowdle, Waddle, something like that, or hell, even Dowdle. What was Waller's price here? I mean, I don't want to get sucked into the Waller 2 touchdowns, but he did seem like their most imposing red zone threat they've had in like 3 years. A tall guy they can throw the ball up to sounds great for a team full of mini people. But like there's ways for us to save money. Are there more important guys, I suppose, John, at the top that you would just like to get to?
I wouldn't say there's anybody at the top. I'd say we have 300 left. We could upgrade Jalen Tolbert to Malik Washington because we don't have Achane in this lineup. Maybe it's a red zone run to Malik Washington instead of Devon Achane. And maybe he's the guy stepping up for Tyreek Hill. But yeah, there's nobody at the absolute top of the price range that like I feel like we need to stretch our lineup to get. If I'm like really paying up for somebody, like maybe Jonathan Taylor, because we want to address that Colts Raiders game.
Yeah, is there one player, Tambo, at the top that you just feel like if you can jam him in, jam him in?
Not particularly. Like when we looked at the conversation we had earlier, like I definitely think still back to it doesn't fit this build, but the Achane conversation, like I think that's a good one, especially as the week goes on, if Dowdle continues to pick up. But this game, you can kind of fit whatever you want in. I was trying to look like if there's a tight end. I was seeing just another version of this, but it's tricky. Yeah, like the Waller comment that you made was interesting, and then it would get you a little more. If you had like Dowdle and Waller, I don't think that's going to be a very common. So what about this version of the build, Pat? Just quickly, it gets kind of all the guys you've just mentioned and kind of like too. But if you go to Amon-Ra over Jameson Williams, keep everything else you had in. Like you had Jahmyr Gibbs, Brees Hall, and you can put in Dowdle with Waller, but you end up getting Amon-Ra instead of Jameson Williams, and you just have like pretty solid all-star lineup if a few things happen with some of the what could be good chalk, because you have like Gibbs, Brees Hall, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra, and I put in Slayton instead of Tolbert, and then you get in Waller, and it lands you back on the Texans D.
Slayton, Waller, Dowdle, Texans D?
Yeah. And so it's kind of like betting on the thing about this is all the Detroit stuff kind of goes hand in hand if it works out. So it's like, it's if it works out, the team that's supposed to score 30 points, you might have some of those points. And then the Brees Hall, the Dowdle stuff, like all that seems pretty good. Slayton without Neighbors, but he's a little bit lower owned still. Like all this could work in your favor. And I just don't think anyone has a build really similar to this or like it, because it still holds all kinds of superstars correlated together and then just good chalk plays played in a different way.
John, did you like this lineup better or the one that we just built that featured at the bottom end, the Texans D, Woody Marks, McBride, JMO instead of Amon-Ra, but it had like Tolbert in it as well?
I probably would have gone with the first one. The Waller thing seems point chasing to me. I don't think he's good. We just watched a guy get 2 touchdowns on Monday night. I probably more of a Trey McBride fan just because he's so consistent at the tight end position. Like Darren Waller is unlikely to get 2 touchdowns again, and he may just not even be on the field as much. The Dolphins have a number of tight ends that they're rotating through, whereas like Trey McBride is the tight end that is making up the bulk of his team's receiving work and receiving targets. So I'd go with the McBride version. But if you love Darren Waller, then we want to go with the second one.
So it's not necessarily Darren Waller or Rico in this game. I think if you want to stay in that game, Tambo, and we can see if we can get ourselves back up to Achane, I think here's the guy that you want to have in there. My main man from last week, Tommy Tremble. I know he scored 2 touchdowns last week, but I don't care if he scores any touchdowns this week. But the way that he's just being used in this offense, he's basically the guy getting the second most targets.
Yeah, everybody loves Tommy T. Anybody with the initials TT? I don't know many of them, just myself, but anybody with those initials, pretty good. I'm solid with that. And he did get you the touchdown, so maybe he's the guy to roll to here.
Well, you go with him, and then you can just do Lions Onslaught if you want to, because it's exactly enough money for Jameson Williams.
The line is saying Lions Onslaught, so.
Yeah.
It's Goff, Gibbs, Amon-Ra, and Jameson Williams.
Let me find this. What did I miss here? Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra, Jamar. Oh, Slayton's still in there. Texans are still in there. What am I missing? I'm just seeing what it projected for. Oh, yeah, Brees Hall. I had a HN in there. That's my bad. Okay.
I would like to get back up to Achane. I just don't think we can do it.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, this lineup's great.
I think if Tommy Tremble had caught 2 touchdown passes on Monday night, we'd be talking about him instead of Waller.
Yeah,
I thought it was
and it's also nice that when you don't have a guy like Dowdle, like this is still, at least you're still leveraging something, and you're doing it at a 1Z position where it's like, yeah, we definitely like McBride better, but if there was a way to get there, this is a way to move it around, certainly. So I think it still makes a ton of sense and fills out some of the other spots.
I thought that it was, yeah, I think John just kind of hit it on the head that if it was a more visible game that Tommy Tremble would be super highly owned this week. I played him last week. He was in a great spot. Everyone talked about Jatavion Sanders like over and over. It's like, man, look at the role he has in this offense. He is out. His direct replacement is like the min price and no one wants to use him. That seemed insane.
Yeah. I like it.
It's still the case right now. It's still the same case this week against an even shittier defense.
And you're getting leverage off Dowdle.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other reason why I like either moving down to Tremble or up to Tet as a replacement for Dowdle in some of these lineups. Just Tet hasn't happened yet, and I kind of want to be there when it does because it feels like it's coming.
Yeah, the other thing you could do is you could play Tommy across from Achane instead of the onslaught and take out Amon-Ra, and it would land you on your Giants D or the Chargers D.
So you take Amon-Ra out, move JMO into that spot.
And get Achane back in, which now is a secondary with Tommy. You don't need to do this. I'm just saying if we liked Achane too, so it'd be another way if you don't want to go the full onslaught, and it would allow you to get your Giants D, who you originally loved, or if you wanted to go Chargers D with that setup, you could do it too. But either or, I think is fine, but it's just a different way to build it without going the full onslaught.
I'm going to throw Seahawks into this one because I really don't like the Chargers defense this week because they're banged up. I mean, maybe it's a good spot to pick on Jaden Daniels with no receivers, with him making a comeback. We already have Slayton in here. I don't want to cannibalize that potentially, and just we don't have any of that Bucs Seahawks game. We really haven't talked about that at all. At $2,800, again, down offensive lineman, the number 1 rated defense in the league right now. John, the Seahawks at home seem like a really good spot against even a banged up Baker.
Yeah, Seahawks at home, always a consideration, right? Like we've seen teams go in there and just say we can't run our offense with the noise. So yeah, Seahawks at home, down Bucky Irving on the Bucs side. I like it.
So let's try to figure this out. We'll continue to do some different options here of building out stacks. But if we were to build either a 3-max or a single entry here, John, where do you think the most logical starting point is? Is it one of the builds that we already had, either the Dak or Fields or Goff, or is there something a little bit different? Because I know you mentioned Daniel Jones earlier.
Yeah, I think the 2 quarterbacks that I would want to address that we haven't so far are Daniel Jones or Justin Herbert. I think they're both in good spots. I think Daniel Jones, he's playing at home. We probably did not think we'd be sitting here in week 5 talking about Daniel Jones, but here we are. And it's against a Raiders defense. That is a defense we're not, looking to shy away from. So yeah, I think that's the perfect starting point is Daniel Jones and Tyler Warren. Warren, I think 70 yards in each of his first 4 NFL games. 3 out of his 4 first NFL games. So, yeah, I'd go Daniel Jones, Tyler Warren, and then figure out if we want to have a Raider on the other side.
So, Tambo, if we build this out for a single entry where we don't need to be all that crazy, if this is going to be a somewhat popular starting point, where would you go with this? Because I don't know what I would like to do on the Raider side. I know Genty went mental last week. It's not that it feels like chasing. Obviously, he's getting the work, but the other 3 weeks were just him getting stuff behind the line of scrimmage. That might not change this time around.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's interesting to me is Jacoby Myers was who everybody wanted last week. He did nothing. He disappointed heavily and now goes up $200 and comes in at 1/3 of the ownership maybe, and he would be more than enough you could stop there and then you'd still be able to get. Remember, we have a ton of good running backs that we like on this slate, and you can play Jonathan Taylor with Daniel Jones, especially in the pass game this year a little bit more. I think it's in this spot, maybe you're looking to leverage that because Jonathan Taylor looks to be right now, currently in the early ownership projections, one of the higher owned. So if you're going the Daniel Jones stack, plus we might have Pittman out where you could actually get somebody else in here too, like you talked about. So, you could actually extend this stack further if you needed to as well.
Tambo, would you want to do that in a single entry, extend this stack out with an unknowable piece, be it a Pierce, Mitchell, or Downs?
You don't have to. I wouldn't be afraid of it for certain. Same as if we had been building the Herbert stuff, I won't be afraid to build with all three of his wide receivers for 16.5 or whatever it costs and just use up all my spots with Herbert and build completely different. And in the single entry, typically it's going to be the little strategy talk. It's going to be a smaller field usually. And in the smaller fields, it's sometimes better that you sometimes see those overstacks work out better, especially if game stacks are one side, because you can get away with a little bit more versus in a 200,000 person milli maker, the one receiver, if I get one guy wrong in that Charger stack side of things, that could be what kills me because somebody else has the other proper piece there that ends up getting them to the top. So I'm fine with just Jones, Warren, and then picking like a Myers or something. I just think we have a lot of good running backs we could fill in with as well. So yeah, lots of ways to build here.
John, would it be Myers for you? Would it be Genty, or would you just say screw it, Jones, Warren, figure out the rest?
I would put in Jacoby Myers. They're playing indoors. It's a road game for the Raiders. They're playing in the Colts dome, but yeah, I would go Jacoby Myers. Like his breakout is coming. He's unfortunately sat and watched as Trey Tucker went berserk and broke the slate. Then Ashton Genty went berserk and broke the slate. Like the Jacoby Myers week is coming. So if we're playing Daniel Jones and Tyler Warren, we have the wide receiver spots available. I'd put in Myers. He's going to get you some points no matter what, and he could have that explosion this week.
All right, so that leaves us with 56-50. Does this, again, Tambo, just become part of like the guys that we've been throwing in?
I think it does. Like, again, I think you're fine where you're at to be able to make the moves that you want, whether it's, decisions around Achane or Dowdle, if you want to pick between those two. Brees Hall, who we've talked about a bunch, like the Brees Hall Pickens thing, I still think is fine in a lineup like this. If you wanted to do a secondary, if we're not on Herbert, maybe we want McConkey or Hampton in this one. Again, all those decisions are where I'm going next based on that's kind of the whole process of this show. And just in general, Pat, is like, if you already like all this stuff in other places, when we get to this point of building a different build, which I love this spot, the two that John mentioned were exactly what I was thinking. It's Herbert and Jones. If you like those spots, you should look to be putting those together, especially for people playing less lineups. That's how you shrink the slate and don't get overwhelmed by 10, 11, 12 games. This week's 10, but it's still double-digit games. So that's how I think about it, at least.
So what if we were able to manipulate it like this? We'll go Slayton, Gibbs, and then Texans D for exactly enough money. So that's Daniel Jones, Achane, Brees Hall, Jacoby Myers, Pickens, Slayton, Warren, Gibbs, and Texans D.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good lineup from where I'm at.
Like, is that, John, is that the proper use of Daniel Jones, Warren, and Myers? Maybe Jones and Warren are very highly owned. As Tambo pointed out, Myers won't be. Are we leveraged enough in this lineup to be different, do you think?
Yeah, actually, this lineup explains the whole slate, right? Jahmyr Gibbs is just, getting the work for the Lions. So that explains that game. We've got the Raiders, Colts game explained here. That's how we started off the stack. And then we've also got the Jets-Dallas game also going to be popular. Well, it's just going, to Brees Hall and George Pickens. So we've got that game accounted for as well. And then, again, our inexplicable Darius Slayton obsession.
Hey, it's not inexplicable. Didn't he break the Slayton? I recall that happening.
Yeah, we at least have an injury with Neighbors now. Like that week we actually were with him, John, and it was inexplicable. It was like, why do we have 90% Darius Slayton? And it was not really something that made sense.
Neighbors was banged up in that game too, for what it's worth. Okay. That's why we were on Slayton.
It makes sense. Injury opportunity.
Yeah. What about what was I going to say? What's a 26? What were we looking at earlier?
$2,600 defense or tight end?
Oh, I was going to say this one, Pat. This was the flip. Maybe this is better. I don't know. But if you take Achane to Dowdle and then put him with the Panthers defense.
Oh, God.
Well, it's just an example. You're not on Achane. We talked about a way to cut into his ownership. You can actually move off the Slayton conversation altogether and just play someone like JSN.
Interesting.
Right? It's not the worst. I'm saying at least it's like both those make sense to me. It's a way if you don't want the Slayton piece. I think Dowdle's fine. How do you cut into him and you're not on Achane? Might as well do it with the defense. And then you get a really good receiver in Jackson Smith and Jigba.
I mean, when we're thinking about the optimizer, John, I'm just taking a look at what's considered GPP value right now. And I just take a look at the difference between HN and JSN, and HN is rated just way higher. Now, I know that's not the end all be all, but what should I be taking away from that?
Yeah, it's just telling you, good GPP values. I would go with HN. I kind of agree with it in this case, just because like adding the reception work to the rushing game for HN and like the Panthers rushing defense is was just abysmal last season. It's not that much better this year. I think that he's one of the guys you want to be starting off your lineups with.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we actually just talk about that game for a second. Like we've talked about different pieces of that game, Tambo. What if you do like the Bryce Young, Dowdle, Tommy Tremble?
Jeez, I think that's the end of the show. No, I'm just kidding. But one thing I was going to say, yeah, that's fine. But just of note, like you just did the HN versus JSN comparison. That one's not close. But remember, when people are doing that, not just you or it's for anybody watching who doesn't know, because I think this is how people struggle through their hand builds and their single entries and stuff. It's not HN versus JSN. It's HN and Slayton versus JSN and Dowdle. And for whatever you lose in JSN and HN, somebody else might see and feel better about Dowdle versus Slayton. Like John was making fun of it. He knows it could be a thing this week and he's fine with it. He's just teasing it. But I'm just saying in general, that's what people do struggle with. They sit there and say, really? Slayton? This guy might not catch a single ball. Dowdle's a starting running back at home in an opposite spot. And I like JSN and it'll be different. So it's to each their own on that thought process, but you definitely have to calculate it all in. So yeah, Bryce Young, Tommy Tremble, let's do it.
All right, okay. I was just joking, but now you have my interest of saying it back to me. Now I'm like, oh, that sounds great. Let's do that. I mean, you could just build up the Tua side as well. You could go Tua.
That's a guy with the TT initials that I'm never really excited about. But
you can throw Tommy Tremble into here as well.
TTTT?
Just all T's. If your name doesn't have T in it, you can't be in a lineup this week. But you go with Tommy Tremble and Rico Dowdle on the other side. And then you can be Achane and Jalen Waddle. Fuck, who cares? We've saved a ton of money in this lineup anyway.
Please, John, tell us where we go from here.
What about not using Achane, right? Like, because we're using Tua. Let's just say, like, this is the way Achane fails, right? Because he's going to be so highly owned. But like, well, yeah, what if it's Waddle
and Washington?
Malik Washington, yeah.
All right, now I like this a lot better.
We got 7,000 per player left, and we don't even have a defense in.
I don't even know if we can fill this out.
Amon-Ra, Taylor, and Chase with a defense.
Let's try.
Yeah,
it'll more than fit. Amon-Ra, Chase. We got 4,300 for a defense. We have any Cardinals D. There we go. We can chuck them in because we haven't used like any Cardinals outside of McBride.
What do you do in this spot, John, to not fix necessarily. Obviously, you can just leave that money on the table. It's $700. I'm just saying, like, is there a thought process you have where, like, okay, maybe we've crossed the line. Maybe we went too far. Like, where can we adjust this? Or what's your thoughts around that?
We are out of control. Actually, so in this case, I would leave the $700 with the thought process being that the pricing came out before the Tyreek Hill injury. Like, all of these Dolphins guys are a little bit underpriced, right? They're a little bit more, a little bit cheaper than they should be, because they were priced before Tyreek Hill got injured. When the pricing was set by DraftKings, they assumed Tyreek Hill was going to be in. The injury happened Monday night. So that explains why we can get a decent looking correlated lineup here and leave $700 on the table.
Okay, I agree. But I'm going to go win all the money with this version of the lineup, Pat. So I'm going to take out Tommy Tremble and play McBride.
That's insane.
That seems insane, I know, to play the best tight end on the slate versus the guy that we're just hoping, strikes lightning in a bottle again. But then I'm going to play Breece Hall over Chase and keep everything else the same.
I was thinking about this because, I mean, if we're playing a Tua lineup anyway, which I don't think is going to be overly popular, John, I don't think that we have to get away from Achane in this spot. Like, this is how Achane fails. Yeah. But let's say we take out Malik Washington, take out and put Chase back in here. Play Achane. Do that. Now what are we at? We're minus $2,700. I had this in my head. Now I completely forgot what it was going to be.
I think it was Tyler Warren and something else.
No, it was Tremble, Dowdle, Waddle, and Achane. Where the hell did I go with this? He was taking someone out. It was Amon-Ra taking out. Oh, yeah, for Jamison Williams. And now we're back at the spot again where, I mean, you can just 3,600 for the Cardinals is fine. You're now leaving 300 on the table, but your worst receiver is Jamison Williams, not Malik Washington. You get Achane back in it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, Achane's definitely a guy who can play with his quarterback. But, just if there is a failure on Achane's part, then we maybe want to be considering like the more of the Dolphins passing game.
I would guess that if Achane fails, the Dolphins fail.
Yeah, that's also true.
And Herbert was the other one that you wanted to build out. So let's do that as the last one, John. How do you... Tambo mentioned just a complete onslaught with Herbert and all of his dudes. How would you play it?
Yeah, I would pick 2 out of the 3 wide receivers. They're all priced right around each other, 57, 56, 5,500. I like the idea of getting to McConkey because I think people will be off of him. But, he's obviously not going to see 0 ownership. So I'd go with McConkey. And then I think Quentin Johnston will probably be the most popular. So yeah, we could put him in, and then I would try to get a commander on the other side because I think either Deebo Samuel is going to be in a good spot without Terry McLaurin, or
I got one.
Sure,
Tambo, how about Ertz in this lineup?
Yeah, if you're going to use them, this is the spot to do it. And also, if you're going to use them, this is the time to do it. We have how many more weeks left until Father Time hits? We'll see. But this is the thing. Usually you want guys like Ertz earlier in the season. So I'd have no problem with that if you want to roll that way. But I think you do want someone pushing this build. You can get away with it, though. We saw it a couple weeks ago with the Geno Smith, with Geno, Tucker, Myers, Bowers, no run back. So you don't necessarily have to run it back. But I don't hate using Ertz in a spot like this if you want to go that route.
Well, I actually like Ertz in this build, John, only because Ertz has been a bit underappreciated the past few weeks. We've talked about there's no McLaurin. You're dealing with either Luke McCaffrey or Penny Lane out there on the outside with a banged up Debo, a 3-headed monster in the backfield. But when Jaden Daniels is in, he throws to Zach Ertz. It's just Marcus Mariota didn't.
Yeah, he's been out of sight, out of mind, right, with Marcus Mariota under center. But yeah, Zach Ertz caught a touchdown each of weeks, 1 and 2 when Jaden Daniels, he has yet to play a game this season with Jaden Daniels and not score a touchdown. So yeah, I think Ertz makes a lot of sense. And I don't think you need a run back, but the Commanders defense is not, or Commanders offense rather, with Jaden Daniels back, they can definitely put up points. And so far this year when Jaden Daniels has been in there, he's been throwing the touchdowns to Zach Ertz.
Weirdly, Tambo, could you kind of flip this? Just put Daniels in the Herbert spot?
I mean, yeah, you could do that. I don't know. I think you have the build, though. I kind of like this build. This build fits the nuts, Pat, for what we've talked about.
All right, so Brees Hall.
Yep.
George Pickens.
No, actually, you can put Jonathan Taylor.
Oh, even better.
And then you can put Devon Achane.
Really?
Yep. And then you can put him with his defense because we're not going to play Dowdle. So we'll just take the defense against him, the Dolphins.
And Darius Slayton?
Nope, even better.
Oh, Jamison Williams.
You got her, man. That's a beauty right there. And it projects well, too.
That's actually, what do you make of this, John? This might be the best one we've built.
Yeah, I agree. It's got the correlation all the way around. We're taking the leverage. If people are playing Rico Dowdle, I mean, there's a lot of paths to failure there for any Panthers running back. So Miami defense, not necessarily a defense that I'm rushing to get into every single one of my lineups, but it makes sense in this lineup, right? With Achane and without Dowdle.
All right, well, let's wrap up with some final thoughts here. There's a couple games that we didn't hit on, like Tampa Bay and Seattle. John, just any quick thoughts from that game of players to use, where to build? What are you looking at?
I think that'll see some ownership, and I don't mind the idea of playing some Rashad White and Jackson Smith and Jigba. The thing with Seattle is they tend to be so concentrated, almost like a little version of the Rams with Puka. But yeah, get JSN into your lineup. You can play him opposite Rashad White if that's the way you're going with your value running backs. But that not overall a game that I'm trying to jam massive stacks of into my lineups.
Anything from you in that game, Tambo? Because I worry about Rashad White. I think that Sean Tucker is going to be a 50-50 split with him.
Yeah, it could very well happen. So I agree. I mean, White was getting involved beforehand. So I know, but again, like you said, there's always Sean Tucker. So not much for me in that game. I think we covered most of the games, but the only thing I would say that we didn't talk about or just is interesting somewhat because of his events last week. What about the Jackson Dart? And we already did talk about Slate, and we do have guys like Olave and you got Kamara in that game for super cheap at 5,900. It's mediocre total, like 42.5, but it is in New Orleans, and it is a chance that we saw Rattler putting up points last week. If he can get going and do that again against the Giants, I think we could see a bit of a back and forth there, a little bit more than these other spots.
I think that there's a big misconception that the Saints like put up points and look good last week. They were terrible last week.
They only put up 19. I'm not saying they put up a bunch. I'm saying my take the whole show has been about just concepts of people thinking that everything's just going to always go the way it's supposed to go. It was like that was supposed to be a 3 touchdown blowout for Buffalo, and the game played back and forth for three and a quarter quarters.
It sort of did, but Buffalo blew them out in that game. Like they moved the ball a little bit, but the stats lined up like they got blown out by 3 touchdowns and didn't score anything. Like Rattler threw for 126 yards.
Yeah, I agree on all that. I'm just saying, like, the score is the score at the end of the game. The best thing about math is 1 + 1 is always 2. They did not blow them out. The final score was like 11 points.
It was, but it was a lot of like weird returns, got short fields. Like the Bills seemed relatively disinterested. What I'm saying is that offensively, you would think for a game that was that close against the Bills scoring so many points, and even though they only put up 19 points, there wasn't a single Saint you could have started.
And to be clear, I don't want Rattler. I'm saying, but if you like Slayton, again, it's kind of the same way that he can go deep, and you've got a guy. You could play Dart, Slayton, and no run back and just fill it out. You could play Dart, Slayton, and Olave or whatever, or Kamara. Like you can run something really short in that spot that's still cheap, has upside, and then you can kind of do whatever else you want with the rest of your lineup. It's just an interesting spot.
I mean, I like Dart. I like Slayton, John. There's just no one from the Saints side I have any interest in outside of like the Slayton of the Saint Shaheed, who can't. I mean, Rattler can't throw the ball deep, so he can't catch long touchdowns anymore.
I like the Saints side. We're not going to get the chance to play New Orleans as a favorite at any other point this season. So take advantage of it while we can. Chris Olave, I think,
Chris Olave sucks. Like he is
third in the league in targets.
He is, yeah. And how's that working out in points per game for him?
Playing
how many of those targets does he catch?
Guaranteed 10 points, Pat. Guaranteed 10 points. He had a touchdown and had 10 points last week. So it tells you everything we need to know. It's not good.
He did lose a point when he threw an interception on 4th down.
That was the worst play call beyond the final play call of last night's game. But yes, so far.
Like, honestly, like if you're going to play the Saints, like Saints and Shaheed together, like Saints D, because maybe he returns a touchdown in the game. I just see no upside with this offense. Like with Olave, yeah, his floor is 10 points and his upside is 10.5 points.
Third in the league in targets.
So he's basically Puka, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Spencer Rattler is my favorite cheap quarterback this week. Playing at home indoors against the Giants defense. We have seen what teams have done to this Giants defense throughout the year so far. And again, like it's our one opportunity to play the Saints as a favorite team. You got to take advantage of it.
We didn't talk about Scadaboo at all, who likely could have scored 5 touchdowns last week, Tambo, and just did the game state. He got stuffed at the goal line, but now he's playing the Saints D.
Yeah, he just kept getting stuffed. That was the problem. He had so many opportunities. He was trying really hard, man. It just didn't work out. So, you could definitely, like I said, that's why I think this spot is interesting. Now I'm even more interested because John's talking about the Rattler side. Like I just think it's another spot where people only focus on the team total and the game total and et cetera, and all these different things. And it's like, it's the same as when a guy scores like 25 fantasy points and his team only scores 14. It's like 14 is still 2 touchdowns typically. So what if it's the one guy who gets the 100-yard bonus and the 2 touchdowns and he's still on a shitty team in a bad game? Doesn't matter. For daily fantasy, he still could be needed. So that's how I think about these spots, and they're all priced super cheap. It's in a dome. This is a good spot where I think you could go to.
Like Scadaboo on the Giants, Slayton on the Giants.
Shaheed let's do one. Can't John just do one more with us? Like
Rattler, okay,
with Scadaboo, with Slayton. What's the plan here, John? Tell us.
All right, build this for us, John.
I think you start off with Spencer Rattler. Right?
Yeah.
So he's a sub 5K starting quarterback. Like if Rattler was coming into the lineup this week at 4,800, right, would be you got to consider him. He's starting. So yeah, I do Rattler, Shaheed. I do a double Saints.
How about Juwan Johnson instead?
If you absolutely refuse Olave, then at least give me Juwan Johnson.
Do we know if Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau are back this week? I saw that they were practicing, and then that's all I heard.
I assume Taysom was still far, far away, and that like the limited practice means he's like able to walk. But I mean, he's a guy I love playing. So if he's active, then he's somebody you have to consider.
Yeah, he's limited. His practice window is open. He has a 20-day return. So it doesn't look like he's going this week. I mean, even if Moreau and Hill are back, I think Juwan Johnson is just running his routes. I think because he hasn't caught a touchdown in 2 weeks, Tambo, that he's still one of the like 4 tight ends in the league who's running over 80% of his team's routes.
I don't know. I think you're right too, but John got me excited over here. These lineups, you can put whoever you want in them. Like these are all-star lineups, Pat. If you just build out some of these versions, like you can, you're getting a quarterback and a receiver for 10K or less, depending on that. And then even if you use our guy Slayton in this thing and forget Scat, because you have like the Jonathan Taylors, the Achans, the Halls, the Hamptons, the whoever you want to go to, these builds get like Gibbs. You can do anything in these builds. And if that game just happens to do enough fantasy wise, you kind of have all-stars in every other position.
I would like to use Scattaboo in this lineup, honestly. I think that's how this game gets pushed a little bit. I mean, or Slayton deep, obviously, but then you just go Taylor, Brees Hall, Pickens. I mean, do we love Pickens? I'm just throwing that out there.
I think if you're playing Brees Hall, it makes sense to run it back with Pickens.
Okay, so Pickens, not. I mean, we don't have room for Javonte Williams in this lineup anyway. And just say even we want. It doesn't seem like we have any Lions. So you go Lions D 7100 is what JSN like that. There's your lineup, and no Miami. And I mean, you could figure out a way to get like Achan and the Dolphins in here instead of. Actually, I don't know if you can. Because we played Scattaboo. Yeah, maybe Scattaboo's not the play. Maybe it is.
Scattaboo's not the play, not because he's not the play.
He doesn't fit this
for
lineup.
The lineup. He doesn't suit it. Like you can get so many better options.
Yeah, you're right. So Slayton as a receiver, and then you can get Gibbs if you want. Fuck, we have too much money now.
Oh, you could probably, yeah. I mean, there's way you could get Pickens and Hall out of there and get something even better.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can get rid of Pickens and just use. What does that get us up to? There's no one exactly there. So, yeah, let's get rid of Hall and Amon-Ra. And you could go... Let's see. What's Achan fitting into this? The problem, John, is that the Saints build might leave us too much money.
You could get different... Like, you could play like a Saquon Barkley... Like that's somebody that's going to see minimal ownership, right? And if we're sitting here struggling, how are we going to spend all this money? That's a way to go to get very different.
Hopefully that's the problem Sunday night after Spencer Rattler wins us the Millie Maker. How are we going to spend all this money? Because this is interesting. You could do a lot of different stuff with these builds.
Yeah, it kind of looks like this. It's like Rattler, Gibbs, Taylor, Shaheed Slayton, Quentin Johnston, Juwan Johnson, Achan, Cardinals defense. I mean, you could lose Juwan Johnson, take the other side of that game with Tommy Tremble, and upgrade Quentin Johnson to like JSN if you wanted to.
Yeah, there's just, I mean, you can play almost whatever you want. The key is you want to try and set everything up in your lineup so that it's like, that should definitely happen or really good chance of that happening, and let the Spencer Rattler stuff just, if it happens, I win. If it doesn't, at least I was built for the chance to win, almost like the Geno situation a couple weeks ago. Everything else in those lineups was phenomenal. It was basically, those were likely bets to come through. And then your underdog or your big outlier was the Geno stuff. That's clearly the Rattler stuff in this lineup.
The only other games, let's see, Houston, Baltimore, we did. I think we've done them all. We didn't even really mention, I mean, you just mentioned Saquon Barkley. You got Philly and Denver. It's a bad matchup both ways, two good defenses. But John, usually when Jalen Hurts is just not going to be owned, I like to play him.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. I forgot Jalen Hurts was on the slate, and then he ended up breaking it, or at least was the highest scoring quarterback. So like you always want to give some thought to outstanding fantasy producers that are just like totally unowned. Like Denver defense is not something we want to pick on, but it's not like we're predicting they're going to shut out Philly. So,
any final thoughts here on the slate? Would you play Jalen Hurts? Like I know you're going to work him in, but let's say single entry 3 max Tambo. And I know you and Blickle, are you got Blickle doing the 10 max or the 20 max show?
Well, it's single entry, but you can extrapolate up. It's just for people that play less lineups, but the focus is single entry every Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern on the Ship It Nation YouTube station. And I currently wouldn't have Hurts in my single entry, just a ton of different ways to go. But I definitely think he's fine to mix in on this slate. It's just people will be scared because he's going up against Denver or whatever, right? Maybe something like that. Hard to stack.
Now that we've talked through the entire slate, I kind of want to revisit the first question that I asked on this show about the cheap running backs, because you have Dowdle with, I guess Trevor Etienne as like kind of the lower version, but we do expect Dowdle to be the main guy there, at least like 70-30 with Etienne. You have the Rashad White and Sean Tucker situation with Bucky Irving out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then you have that other situation, the Cardinals one, with DeMercado, with Bam Knight, with Michael Carter. I think it's Michael Carter, at least in terms of like touchdown equity over DeMercado, but if that game flips, it could be DeMercado. Now that we've tried to build out these lineups, John, do any of those guys, are any of those guys good pivots, or because Dowdle is there and there's other cheap options, just don't concern yourself?
So I don't think that there's like chalk you need to have. Like, I don't think you need to get Dowdle. He's absurdly cheap if he's getting a 70% running share. But there are so many other options. There is the Rashad White, and everything costs a roster spot too, right? So like if you're playing Dowdle, that's like one less running back that you can put into your lineup on a week where we have Achane, we have Jonathan Taylor, we have Omarion Hampton, we have Jahmyr Gibbs with a 30-point implied point total. So I don't think you need to like get fixated on any one. Like, there's no value running back that we can't kick out of our lineups.
And Tambo, which way would you try to play that? Because Breece Hall is going to be pretty popular, at least we expect him to be very popular. That does create a bit of a buying window on those mid $5,000 running backs as well. Like, just legit, no one's using Woody Marks, for example.
Yeah, I would say it's the other way for me, actually. I think that's the beauty of this show, Pat, and why we do this and go through and you start to see. I tell people this all the time, but they start with a bunch of quarterbacks. They can't figure out how to whittle them down. Well, build some lineups with them and look at what the lineups actually look like. What this show made clear for me today so far, even with the expectation that Dowdle is going to get more popular and more steam, et cetera, I actually don't think you necessarily need any of the cheap running backs, because we could build great lineups with good stacks. And it's not people like, oh, you guys are idiots, you just use Rattler. No, I'm saying in the other lineups, we built, there was a Herbert lineup that was phenomenal that didn't need anything. You could still get Achane, Taylor, Hall, whatever. So we're still different enough around the chalk without even having to go to those running backs that I actually don't even know if they'll end up getting steamed as much as we think by the end of the week. Because the thing on this slate is there's no expensive quarterback wide receiver stacks that are popular. So people are already not needing to go there in the first place. And there's tons of good lineups without them in general.
Honestly, if we can just get the Daniel Jones, Tyler Warren, Jacoby Myers like mini stack to come through, that was the lineup that I think made the most sense, because we didn't use any of the cheap running backs. Slayton was our cheap guy at $4,300, and we had Gibbs, Achane, and Breece Hall in it.
Exactly. Yep, that's how I'm seeing it after everything we looked through.
And I'll say it's all interconnected, right? Because there's no Christian McCaffrey, there's no Puka Nacua. So the guys we feel really good about spending up for in most weeks are not options this week. So that takes some of the shine off of these value running backs.
Yeah.
John, what do you got coming up this week? I know you're live later on Friday afternoon on the 4for4 YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, so just about an hour, we're doing the DFS MVP show. That'll be myself, Neil Orfield, usually Pat Crane, and Davis Maddock as well. I think Pat's off this week on a bye. But then, I'll have my positional picks cheat sheet coming out momentarily, then get my GPP article out by the end of the day. That'll be available early evening, usually after the Friday practice reports. Then got my solo ship show as well will be coming out. A lot going on this Friday as always.
4for4.com/Mayo or Mayo50 to get yourself 50% off plus a free week of the Sharp Stack app, which includes all of John's work, all of the DFS tools for whichever site that you want to go to. Highly recommend that you go do that right now. 4for4.com/Mayo, code Mayo50 for 50% off the monthly plan over there, which includes everything behind the premium wall at 4for4.com. Tambo, you're going to be live, like you mentioned, with Blickle on Saturday morning, and you have all of your shows out already, plus something this afternoon on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel.
Yeah, we got tomorrow's going to be the show. Next one up with Leverage Lane with myself and Alex. Sunday will be the same with Hoop Title and myself. As always, they got the cash game show this afternoon. And if you want to go check out shipitnation.com, you can use code SHIP19 and it'll get you a monthly all access for $19 for 5 days. So you can try it out for 5 days. And if you don't like it, you can move on. If you like it, pair it together. I say this all the time. You can get 4 for 4, get a bunch of John stuff, get some of Mayo stuff, get some of the tools over there, pair them up with what's going on in Ship It Nation. We keep everything affordable, much like 4 for 4, so that you can build that stack. Like everything else in life, it's not always just one way or the highway. Like you can put everything together and get some good insights and be able to build some different lineups that are good. Give yourself a chance to get to the top of these fields and hopefully win some money in these tournaments.
None of my stuff is behind the paywall, so you're not wasting your money on that.
And we keep that stuff free for a reason, right?
Yeah,
Pat?
that stuff is free. The good stuff that's only there to encourage you to buy the. It's like, man, if this is the free stuff, like this isn't really helping me. Maybe the premium stuff most definitely will, which I think that will end up being the case because you get John and you get the tools. Last thing, Tambo, I got Michael Kim on the show later on today. Anything you want me to ask Michael Kim?
I don't know, man. Like, it's just an incredible journey. I love that stuff. Obviously, we knew he was talented. It took a little while with the John Deere when he had that blowout win at the John Deere. And then just to see him get that win, what was it, last week or the week before, or whatever it was, that's just, an incredible journey from a guy that people thought was nowadays a Twitter guy. It's like, no, this guy can play. Love all his insights, man. I'm going to be loving it. Anything you can get out of him, great. I'm sure you'll ask wonderful questions. But, man, it's just awesome to see a guy that shares so much then go out and still have the success. I think oftentimes it gets pinpointed as, even in DFS, and John will be able to speak to this too, where it's like, oh, they only do this because they can't win at it anymore. It's like, no, sometimes people just have a passion for helping others and enjoying what they do and what they get to do every day. They're very grateful for. And he seems like one of those guys. So just an awesome dude, and congrats to him for getting another win.
Well, John, when he came on the Pat Mayo Experience last year, he was ranked 180th in the world. He is now the 31st best golfer in the world and in all the signature events, and made like $10 million this year.
Yeah,
So,
I've had
what could happen to you?
I've had some good Michael Kim lineups this golf season.
So maybe it'll happen to you as well, that now that you're coming on the Pat Mayo Experience, you'll go from like the 9th best DFS player to like number 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
And win millions of dollars. And we hope that we can help you guys win. I mean, I hope you win millions, but if we can help you win like hundreds, that would be awesome as well. Smash a like and sub to the channel while you are here. You can always catch the show on demand, video or audio, on Spotify under the Pat Mayo Experience, Apple Podcasts under the Pat Mayo Experience, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. See you next time.